everyone, my name is Bart. Welcome back to the Coach Dave Academy YouTube channel. Today we'll be taking the iRacing Formula iR-04 around Barcelona for today's lap guide. Let's get to the hot lap. Okay, so now we're coming onto the main straight at Barcelona. Really awesome track this, really tricky one as well. Very long straight in this car. I'm sure that the racing is going to be really interesting, and this is easily going to be your best opportunity to pass people. Massive toe down the straight. So yeah, make sure to get a good exit. So into turn one, you can run over the curbing here. I found in this car, because it's so low, in a GT car it's a bit better, but in something like this it's so low it's kind of bottoming and gets a little bit unsettled on the brakes. You have to be careful if you're going to run over. You can see here I'm just maximizing all the red and white curb usage on the left before we turn into the first part of the chicane. Quite a heavy braking zone in this car, being really efficient on the brakes, and then but still trying to carry quite a bit of speed for the first chicane, which is a pretty quick medium to high speed corner in fourth gear. My reference is you got this slip road thing on the left and the 100-meter board, and it's kind of just between those two. You go past 100-meter board, hit the brakes. Turning in quite early, and the reason why we're doing this is because we want curb. You need to be on this curb, right? If you bounce off this sausage curb, it's not going to be too good for you. So don't try to be all over this like you would in some of the GT cars potentially. But you do definitely want to be on this curb. It shortens the line and really opens up the second part of the chicane, which is going to affect turn 3 as well. And that is all kind of one corner, the first chicane, turn 3 here. So it all starts with this preparation here. So yeah, just starting to pick up throttle because now the car's hooked up on the right curb. It's rotating quite well, so now I can start picking up the throttle. Full throttle quite quickly, as always in this car. Quite an aggressive turn to the left. Again, using the curbing to shorten the distance and to get the car around the corner. This is one of those cars, especially with the open diff, it's very understeery on throttle. So we really want to hook the car on the curbs to keep it turning. And it can take quite a bit of curb without getting upset. Just bear in mind, if you do run much more curb than this, I believe if you run the right wheels start coming to the red and white, you will get an off track as well, and it will probably unsettle the car. So this bit, it's important to get back left, but we don't have to be fully left because it will still be flat for us here unless you're very tight to the right-hand side. But you don't want to be too far right because even if it is flat and you go all the way to the white line on the right-hand side, you make turn 3, this next long right-hander, so much more of a corner. The car's very aggressively loaded. And like I said, because it's quite understeer, especially on the fixed setup, you're going to be struggling on the exit. And it's going to just, even you're going to be taking the corner flat, most likely you're going to be scrubbing so much speed and there's so much load and weight in the car that's just not going in the correct direction. So for the sake of just the speed we want to get on the exit, and which is again a possible overtake opportunity in this car, we want to try and open it up a bit more. So you can see here I go about halfway. You can go probably about half a car width, wider than this at maximum, but you've got to make sure you get back left here and then into the right, and still trying to be relatively smooth with the steering. If you're like bang bang, super aggressive, the car won't respond super well. Just nicely touching the inside curb kind of will help you turn a tiny bit if you just clip it, but it's mainly just to widen up the track and that exit. And you can see here that is your limit. So if you run your left wheels on that second bit of darker green AstroTurf, you will get an off track. So this is as wide as you can go here. And then I find often at the end of this corner, not aggressively turning the wheel, but hold the lock you still have on. So if you look at the bottom left, look at my steering here, you can see I hold the lock on a little bit. That's just to shorten the distance a little bit there. It's kind of worth more than, some people say, oh, straighten up, where you kind of you're not on the right part of the track then. You're going to be the wrong way. You get the turn anyway. So it's a little bit better to just hold a little bit of lock on and then kind of straighten your run towards the braking zone for the next corner. So turn 4, good corner this. Here we can have our right wheels on the curb and our left wheels just kind of clipping just over the green AstroTurf on the left here. Your reference is roughly, I don't want to say the shadow, but it kind of is in this example, because you don't want to use shadows because they change. But this white line here, you can see just before that is where I start braking. It's a bit of a tricky one to be using braking markers for, and as always, I would recommend to start trying to look into the corner. But if you're going to rely on a marker, just as soon as this comes right into your direct vision, I would start braking. This corner is all about, similar to the first corner and a lot of corners in this car, is just carrying the momentum and a really like direct early throttle pickup. If you go in very aggressively carrying speed and the car's sliding about, you've gone in too fast. So I just make sure it's nice and settled. Quite heavy brake again, but not very long. Bleeding out quite quickly. See, holding a little bit of brake on here, trailing into the corner just to keep the weight on the nose. If we come off the brake, it's going to get unsettled in this car and not be very good with the open diff. But just holding a little bit of brake to decelerate the car and keep the weight on the nose, help it turn. And then quick throttle pickup when we know the car is going to grip. And again, we meet the inside curb and just let the car out. I wouldn't go all the way to the left. Similar reasons to turn 3. In this car, it just seems to scrub speed if you let it out that extra bit. Once it feels like it's got it turned, you can prepare for the next corner, just go. We don't need to take the extra distance and keep the car kind of loaded for a bit longer. So it's a bit better this way. So moving on to turn 5, we need to be on this right-hand curb. Using it for braking really helps widen up the entry here. And I see way too often, far too often, people taking too long to get back to the right-hand side, which is kind of a little bit why as well we want to be moving away from not necessarily running right the limit of the previous corner and exit as well. So yeah, really quick over to the right-hand side here. Going to make a big difference. If you're braking on an angle and the car's not quite flat, it's not going to turn to the corner and brake very well. So no references here. So if you're going to rely on braking markers, I'm really sorry. There's not much here. You've got these posts on the right, and it's kind of when we go past this one, which is the third one before the corner, these little posts with lights on top of them. You can use that, but you're, again, probably better off just practicing and judging and getting that distance right to the apex. Again, a heavy brake. Nicely bleed out. And I've always found for this corner, you do want to turn in. Turn early is probably not correct, but we do want to use the camber on the inside here and be a bit earlier than a traditional hairpin. I would say like a flat hairpin, just because you can see there's a ridge here on this part of the track, and then it kind of cambers in on the left hand side. If you're in too early, quite often what happens is you go over this ridge and then you'll lock a wheel because there's quite a big drop there. And then you're also too tight for the exit and you understeer. And if you're too late, you just never, ever reach the inside white line. So it's quite good here just to come out of the brakes, bleed out, roll speed into this cambered approach of the corner. It's a hairpin where you can roll quite a bit of speed, especially in this car. It's in third gear, not second gear. And then again, fairly direct throttle pickup, right on the limit of the track limits here. You will not gain off track for using all this track. So make sure you run right to the gravel trap there. And then I just like to take a shorter line. I know there's a lot of people who do kind of go around the right in order to make sure they're 100% straight for the uphill chicane. But it's better to just, if you're going to get it straight, if you really feel like you need to do that, that's fine. But if you know you're confident in getting the car straight before the next corner, just shorten distance here. So, uphill chicane, super difficult part of the track. All the time, people brake too late. They try to carry too much speed. It looks tighter than it is in a way. It's a tricky corner. Really, really easy to make a mistake here. So make sure you're at the white line and preparing the car correctly and early. You don't want to be, let's say, meeting the edge of the track as you're on this red and white curving. It's going to be tricky. Really difficult for the car if you're really aggressively rotating it initially. So into here, not as much of a brake as the previous corners on the track. This is fourth gear. It is a lot about, well, it's mainly about getting throttle early because we've got an uphill approach before the fast right. So throttle early, and if you're holding the brakes long into this corner or you're struggling to get onto throttle, the car will be very nervous and hard to control at the hill. If you can get an early throttle pickup here, it will settle the car. You can run this curb aggressively, and it'll help your exit. So definitely important here just to brake not super early, but just on a touch on the early side and think more about your exit and think about meeting this inside curb. Left wheels on the red and white, even on the green here. So again, early throttle pickup, the force us out wide. I've always been a fan of, always use this runoff. You're never going off track or anything. You just don't want to touch a sausage curb in this car. So make sure you get back in time before that. So turn 9. Not much going on here. It's just a little bit of lift. It depends on track conditions and, your wind in iRacing. If following people, tires, temperature, all sorts of things. I do think in perfect conditions, in qualifying, say with a setup, it will be flat. You can see here I take a small lift just because the car is really, really understeer if you do approach flat out, and you'll be forced to shift into fifth as well because you can hear the cars kind of buzzing up the limiter. Important points for this corner. Make sure you're using this curb on the left. Make sure at this speed, this much curb makes a massive difference in terms of what the car can do. So it's really important to use this little bit extra bit of track. Getting over the inside curb here, so you have a bit of a lift in fourth gear, and then once we get to the crest and hooked on this right hand curb, I'll shift up on the exit. There we go. So second point is you can see this sausage curb, this little lump. That's where you want to meet the inside. If you meet too early here, if you lift really early, you'll overslow the car. You'll probably then try and pick up throttle earlier, and you'll end up wide and either in the gravel trap or having to lift again and really damaging your exit. So make sure, see, I'm flat, and then we're just starting to lift now after we started turning to the corner. So very late lift just to let the car meet the inside curb, and then as soon as we're on that curb, you can go back on the throttle. The car should hook up and push yourself wide on the exit. Okay. This left-hand kind of hairpin is very difficult in this car. It can get quite loose in low-speed corners. So just be wary of that. You can't push it quite as late as maybe you think you can. So braking references, you got this black, this is a light signal board here on the right. That and the 100-meter board in this range is where you're braking, depending on how confident you are, grip conditions, etc., etc. But main thing for this corner, dead straight on the brakes, right wheels on the curb. I don't always like being fully on the curb here because I find it affects your braking if you're over fully on that green. It certainly can be done. Really hard hit the brakes. You can see almost 100% brake pressure. Maintain that brake pressure quite late into the corner. Stay straight. So many people here just start creeping. They start creeping in. They start turning in early. You've got to stay straight. You've got to stay straight. The car wants to just focus on slowing down. Get it slowed down first, then start pulling out the brakes. Turn into the corner. You don't want to meet it super early. In this car, you don't want to use the inside curb. Just meet the white line. You don't need that extra rotation at this point. So just make sure we're here and focusing on opening up the exit, which is more important in this car. And once you get it rotated, you can see us stopping up the throttle quite nicely. Not as aggressively in some of the faster corners. Let the car out. You're happy to ride on this sausage. Don't go over it like you would in GTs. It'll balance the car and probably if you run like a full tire width off the yellow, you're right on the edge of getting a off track as well. So that can quite easily happen, and you'll probably end up bouncing on the floor. So just be careful. You can run up against it though and lean on it like this. So that is important to note. Yeah, and just being really nice with the steering. I find in this corner always, nice. You put it on, not too aggressive, but then putting the lock on when you need it in the middle of the corner, and then quite quickly getting the lock off, helping the car with the traction. And then into this next section. So this kink is easily flat in our car, so I'm not going to worry about that. You can see on this lap, I hold third gear, and the car's going to be right in the limiter in third. Just hold it. No real point changing to fourth. You just get what's quite an awkward downshift into the next corner. So I find it's a lot better to hold third. So we want to be on this left. I don't run on that AstroTurf because it unsettles the car quite a bit with the floor touching the red and white curbing. So we just run as much as we can on that curb. You see, we're just not focusing on opening up the corner. Even putting a little bit of steering lock after we've gone past this as well, just to open up the exit for what's a really, really long right-hander. And a soft brake here is probably the most important thing I would say. You see, I'm barely braking here. You won't be able to do it with lift. The car will not turn in properly. So you will need a little bit of a brake like this, just to decelerate the car enough and to help with the rotation, get the weight onto the front. But yeah, it's a very long corner, and quite often people get sucked into over-slowing and slowing down too early, and then they're waiting for a long time. They're playing with the throttle for a long time. So just make sure you're braking soft enough that you're able to roll a lot of speed into the corner, and that'll help you have a later and more direct throttle pickup rather than going on and off and on and off. So, and the other part of that is looking far around to the corner. If you look, you can see at this point in the corner here, and try to aim for that as your entry point, you're going to be slowing the car down quite early. So if you just keep looking around and trying to find your exit rather than feeling lost in the middle of the corner, and just keep preparing for that exit. See, I don't meet the inside of the corner. I do get onto the inside curb, but I don't meet it until quite a long way around. And then we can pick up the throttle once we get it hooked up on this inside curve. Start picking up the speed, full throttle, just push the car out nicely. Again, you can use all the runoff up to the gravel trap, no off tracks for us. And then this next 90 right is quite a tricky corner. Down third gear, use all the track up to the sausage curb. Car will want to slide a lot because it's off camber. So if you push the entry here, you'll really struggle. And it's really, really important you don't over push this corner, because if you run too wide here, you will get a really bad exit onto the main straight, as I'll show you in a second. Not a super heavy brake from me. Down one gear into third. You will want to roll quite a bit of speed, but it's more important that we're tight. We're tight to this curb, right next to the sausage curb. And then we're in a position where we square off the corner and get over to the right really early. If you run out fully to the left-hand side sausage curb, you're not going to be able to make it back to the right with the car settled, and it's going to really affect your exit here through the chicane. So, back to the right. Try and get as far right as you can. It's always one of those things you're playing with the limit here, because the faster you take that right-hander, the harder it is going to be able to prepare the chicane. But at the same time, you don't want to be going really, really slow through there. So I would recommend first and foremost making sure you're getting over to the right-hand side of the track here, and then building up the previous corner and keep pushing it rather than focusing on finding time here. There's not much to be found. There's no exit really to speak of. So much more important to focus on the final chicane. And here we are at the final chicane. Quite tricky. Not much in the way of references here. You're going to be braking around the start of the curb. But it depends a lot on the speed you've carried and the position. It's going to change a lot lap to lap, and it's a big challenge in a race managing that. So it just takes a lot of practice. You can see here, the main thing I would say is when you're braking, don't brake too long here. I think it's quite easy for people to hold the brakes, think they're not going to slow down, hold the brakes more, and then turn in and lock up, and then that really hurts your run. So just try and have a solid brake and then start bleeding out quite quickly. Because the other thing you want to do, especially in a car like this, which can roll quite at a speed, being quite light, is you have quite a late minimum speed here. So I should say. So you have the car slower now, and you roll quite a bit of speed into this point. You're not stopping it dead on the apex curve and then going full throttle like really, really early in the corner, because if you do that, you'll just end up not being able to having to lift out massively through this right-hander. So it's important here that we do roll a bit of speed when we come with the brakes, while still getting the car fully over to this left-hand curb. Again, similar to the previous corner, using all the curb up to the sausage curb. And this angle is what we want, right? You can see here, I've really opened up the track for what's the most important exit on the whole lap. And I've managed to also get a really early throttle pickup with that positioning after rolling quite a bit of speed as well. So it's going to help us get a really good exit here. You will have to lift, right? You would have to lift in this car because it needs that rotation with a fixed setup being quite understeering. So it will be a part lift. But yeah, I think again, it's a corner where I've experienced a lot of times people over slow for this right. They get on throttle really early for that left, put themselves over to the right here at a position, then they slot massively for this right as well. Always when you're lifting for this corner, in any car, try and hold some throttle on for two reasons. One, you'll have more rear grip. The car will be nicer to drive. It won't as aggressively pitch. And you won't lose rear grip as you turn in. So don't lift super aggressively and try to hold some throttle on. The other reason is the speed. You just carry way more speed then. And especially if it's a turbo car or something, it's going to be spoiling the turbos, etc. So you can see I get to full throttle here, and then just as I'm turning right, I just come out the throttle. That'll help the front grip a little bit, but we've only gone down to about 50% throttle there. And then as soon as we hit this apex, and we know we've got the car positioned nicely for the exit, we can go full throttle. And then similar to add the hairpin early in the lap, you can lean on this curb. You don't want to run over it. You don't want to be running the wing and the floor all over the sausage curb and bouncing off that. So just lean on the edge. And then the last corner, really smooth, not much to it. Bit harder when you're following, but pretty easy in this car. And that takes us to the end of the lap guide. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that lap guide. I've been Bart, and I'll see you next time. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and to join the Discord that's in the video description below. See you in the next video.